Hello, everyone, and welcome. I've started tearing up already, so I know it's going to be a good night. Just the energy of everyone coming into the room and just feeling into what's coming through for me right now. I'm already in tears. I am already feeling something that I didn't feel the other night, the first time we presented Journey to the Sacred. I've been feeling called to do a gathering since coming back from Costa Rica and Mexico. And many of you have been part of my community. You've been part of walking with me over the last couple of years or last few months. Some of you are brand new. Some of you have joined me for the first time tonight. Maybe you're just meeting me now. Hello, my name is Audra. I'm glad you're here. Our paths cross at certain times for a reason, I believe. And I believe that there's a reason that we're doing an encore of this tonight. When we did it last Thursday, there were some issues with the internet, and I called the internet company, but the Zoom recording wasn't good enough. I'm like, no problem, we're going to do it again. We had some issues with the internet again today. Thankfully, I picked them up early. So I am now at Eddie Tony's place. I am in his office. He will be taking a call in the ceremony space. I'm so grateful that he would make space for me to be here with you. We had ceremony here on Saturday, and there's been something so special about stepping back into these sacred spaces with people where they are going deep into their own hearts, into kind of bringing up some of the things that maybe they're not normally used to looking at, that they're having the courage to see and the courage to ask for support so that they might actually be able to move through and live a life of greater freedom or of greater clarity or purpose or whatever it might be. And my belief is that every single one of us is on our own unique journey of coming back home to our true self, which in my belief is of a greater connection with the universal consciousness of everything, with the divine, with God, with spirit, whatever you might call it. I want you to know that I fully honor and respect you, your path, and your belief system, but that tonight I'm also going to be inviting you into more. More being that perhaps what we think we know and what we believe, maybe there's actually something a little more expanded that we're being invited into. And that was my experience the last couple of months in Costa Rica and Mexico. I felt like I kind of banged out the cup. Some of you know that metaphor I talk about, where spirit talked to me about how showed me a copper vessel and like a hammer banging out the vessel from the inside, where sometimes the thing that actually increases our capacity the most is the struggle that we have from the inside that stretches us and allows us to be able to hold more love, hold more hope, hold more in service for others, whatever it might be. I'm just so grateful to be on the journey and that you would choose to be with me here tonight. Some of you were here on Thursday and you heard a few of my stories from Costa Rica and Mexico. You'll hear who was here. Give me a wave if you were here on Thursday. There were a few of you who were. So cool you came back. I heard that the energy was so electric, it disrupted my internet. So yeah, I trust that we're going to get exactly what we need tonight. And for those that are coming for the first time, there are a couple big stories that I do want to touch on that will come out in a different way tonight because the energy is different, but also I've been integrating more and more. So one of the stories I'm talking about is our connection with the land, our connection with understanding the reciprocity that comes when we're actually honoring the land and honoring the first peoples of the land that we're on. There's a story of the greatest struggle I went through, my near-death experience. That was a month ago. And I don't say that lightly. I really did think I was going to die. It was over. And I'm also going to be sharing a story with you that has given me the absolute key for walking in boldness in this lifetime, and that I believe has actually shifted the way I'm going to show up. You might be seeing a shift in me in the way I'm speaking now, in the energy I'm showing on social media, or maybe it's not something that's so perceptible to you, but it's different to me. I can tell that I am showing up with a courage I didn't have before. And part of that is realizing that I don't feel I have time to waste. When we start to realize how important the message is that we hold inside of us, and each one of you has a message in your heart, when you start to realize that the consequence of not using your voice, of not speaking in a way that's important to you, that it might actually really hurt your heart to hold it in, you start acting in a different way. So my hope tonight is that these stories will inspire you, that they will rekindle a fire in your own heart, and that whatever it is that you take tonight, that it would help you on your journey as I share with you a bit of mine. First thing I'm just going to invite us to do is to close our eyes and to drop in for a second, because I actually want to feel into the energy of everyone who's here, and just ask that we would be led in a way that is good for all, for the highest good of all. So just closing our eyes, taking a deep breath in and out. And feeling into the energy of what's alive for you in this moment. Is there a feeling? Is there an emotion? And if you were to tune in even a little closer to your heart, after what may have been a busy day, just taking a breath to connect in with your heart. Is there a message there for you? Is there a whisper that is begging you to listen? And in this place, I ask with the deepest humility and the greatest gratitude that we would be guided in truth, in greater levels of awareness, that the highest self of each person and the energies that support them would give them exactly what they need from this gathering tonight. May I be open and receptive to the energy and to the way that I'm being guided. And may we ultimately all go away with a greater revelation of love and connection with spirit, the earth, and each other. Taking a deep breath in and a big exhale out. And gently coming back, opening your eyes. Hello, 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 hello. I'm so glad you're here. Ever since I sat down in this room preparing to get on this call, I started to feel waves of emotion come. So I would like your permission to just speak freely and just speak openly and not have any sort of like preconceived script or idea, that I can just let that all go, the idea of what was meant to happen tonight, and to kind of open the channel and allow for the energy to move, because I believe that's where we'll receive the most. It's also in times like this that I feel like there's something deeply sacred that I am choosing to share with you. And all of you who opted to be here, be it on live right now or on the recording, you've said yes to wanting to hear a bit of my story. You've said yes to wanting to receive the teachings or the lessons that I would like to share with you, that I received into my heart the last couple of months. But there's a vulnerability here that is for now and maybe not for tomorrow. I'm only making the replay available for 48 hours because that's what feels safe to me, because there's certain things that are shaking and moving in me that once the dust settles, I won't speak of them in the same way anymore, because I'm going to be emerging into a place where I'm just continuing to trust the path, but also where I might choose to keep certain stories just locked into my own heart because they are sacred. And there's something that happens. And the reason I kept getting the message to call this event Journey to the Sacred, I didn't want to call it this, but that was what I heard over and over. No, this is what it's called, is because I'm inviting you to journey to the most sacred parts of yourself. In a world where nothing is considered sacred anymore, where we share everything from our breakfast to our breakups on social media, it often means that we think that everything that happens in our life and in our heart is for mass consumption. And it's not. There's things that are going on in your life that are deeply personal, deeply private, that is certainly your prerogative to share if you choose. But something happens when we create community where intimacy is how we hold each other. We hold each other with this loving awareness, with this respect, with this care, this compassion that allows for safety for us to bring out the stories in a way where it's not about what someone perceives of us, but it's actually about what feels true in our hearts. For me, there's been some really big shifts the last couple of months. And there was even the story that I share going in the Temescal was really a death and a rebirth. So it makes perfect sense that I would be sharing this story today with all of us here after some of us have celebrated Easter, because that's what Easter's about, right? For me, some of you know, and some of you might have received my emails or seen the posts on Instagram. I used to actually be in a Pentecostal church, and I was a worship leader in the church, and I was preaching on Sundays. I wasn't brought up in a religious home at all, but I always felt like I knew God, I knew spirit. So it was a really natural progression for me to go to a place where people wanted to hear me share more about that, to teach more about that. But there were certain things not in alignment in my heart, like around my own values, where the church was saying one thing and what was felt true to me was a different thing. So eventually I ended up leaving. But the truth of Jesus actually never left me. I never felt like that I let go of that belief, but I just made more room. I made more space, you see. So there's a lot more that I believe. But I also believe that when we consider things like Easter, like the death and resurrection story of Jesus, we are being invited to look at parts of ourselves of like, what part of me is going to be rebirthed? Is there something to be resurrected? Is there a hope that I can hold on to now that there's new life for me? Or is there an understanding, if you really know what the story is all about, an understanding that there's nothing you have to do in your own strength to be loved and accepted by God? And if I say that word and you're like, I don't like that word, that's okay. Replace it with something else. You can say the universe, you can say spirit, and maybe you don't believe anything at all. That's totally okay. But the thing that I feel I'm here to help tell people is how to reconnect with the truth that they are part of the everything. You are part of that. And I believe part of our human experience of walking through this world is a remembering of who we really are, and then actually starting to partner with the energies, with spirit, if that's what you call it, with the earth, to restore things back to proper order. Just like Jesus said, on earth as it is in heaven. Or we might actually say in other circles, as above, so below. And so it is. What we're really doing is we're restoring harmony. Some of you are Tao practitioners. You follow the Tao and Dr. and Master Zhigang Sha, and you understand his teachings around the law of Shen Qi Jing. You understand the teachings around love, peace, and harmony. We are here to restore harmony, to restore balance. So the story of Christ dying and then rising again is to restore that balance that then allows for connection with God, with spirit, without any of our human stuff getting in the way. I have more of a universalist view in my own belief experiences now, but I feel now there's a reason why we're meeting tonight, because for some of you, even if it wasn't a conscious contemplation over this past weekend, there is already a bit of a resurrection spirit or energy that's stirring in you, that's inviting you into something more this spring, this summer, this fall, where your life is actually saying there is more for you here. The status quo or the law or legalism that you might have been holding yourself to, that you can let it go and that you can open up to the invitation to come back home. So my prayer for tonight is that as I share vulnerably of these stories, you listen with an ear on your heart and you connect in a way where you receive what is for you and you release what is not. And I share openly and boldly because I have come to believe that that's the way I have to. that holding back isn't doing you a service. So I'm going to trust you as your own sovereign being to receive what's for you and let go that which isn't, instead of me trying to cushion the words as I've done for probably 39 out of 40 years of my life. Let's just take a breath together there. So those who know me, we've journeyed together in different ways. Some of you were part of the Golden Path, my last group program. Some of you have done private mentorships with me. You've sat in medicine ceremony with me, or you've done Shiva Shakti energy sessions with me and Maddie. And it's just been such a beautiful thing to see all the ways the energy works. But I really believe that my job here, and Spirit had shown me this before. Sorry, as I'm crying, my nose is running. But that part of my role is to help shine a light. When you see the name Copper Lighthouse, that's because there's two names that were given to me in spirit. And the lighthouse shines the light, but doesn't drive the boats. You're the captain of your own ship. And Little Copper, my other name that was given to me, is about being a resource and actually carrying the medicine to the people, just like that copper cup that got banged out. So sharing these stories and doing part of this, I feel really excited about it, because we get to remember who we are when we hear someone else's stories. And there's a lot of Indigenous teachings and teachers that this is how they share. This is how they share some of the most beautiful and richest values within belief systems. It's through story and oral tradition. And we've lost so much of that in our Western culture. Now, for me, I'm a non-Indigenous woman. I'm living here in the land that we call Canada. But this is actually the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit. There's treaties on this land that I now am part of by living here that is about restoring good relationships. It's about having equal partnerships with the original caretakers and custodians of this land. And we all have a responsibility to be part of reconciliation. And the reconciliation and reciprocity that happens, it happens not just in our words, it can happen in our hearts and in the energy. And I even have seen it happen in a beautiful way through spirit connecting people. One thing I wanted to announce to all of you that I haven't shared publicly at all. My madrina from the moon dance, her name's Marina. She's the one who invited me down to the moon dance. She and I are going to go to Vancouver in September for healing our spirit. Here, oh, she's arriving right now. Oh my gosh. Look at that. I wasn't even going to say anything. All right, you're all going to have to give her a wave when she comes on. It sounds like my madrina's here. Is she here? Madrina Marina, hello. I was just sharing, sister, that you and I will be going to Vancouver for the Healing Our Spirit Worldwide Conference. We wrote an abstract, and Marina will be sharing there about her ancestral medicines, about working as a cross-cultural promoter and plural ethnic ambassador of Indigenous cultures. And she's sharing about the eagle and condor prophecy and connecting Indigenous people from the North and the South. And I am so very honored to be part of it, especially as a non-Indigenous person. It's pretty profound, really, that this is happening. What a time to be alive. So whether you are Indigenous or not, whatever your culture may be, know that there's ancestral roots that are calling you back to old ways of knowing, where we have lost our ways in so many ways in the culture that we're living in. And we're being called back home. And when we actually understand that, when we actually start connecting in with this truth, we can share in a good way with others. So part of sharing in a good way means that I like to elevate and amplify Indigenous voices. And I have the honor to do that with Marina, who is my madrina who brought me to the moon dance. So I will be sharing with you about that. Marina, as we sat in ceremony there, we met I'm not sure, it was in July after the Six Nations of the Grand River powwow. I saw her outside of a shop called Ancestral Voices and approached her. And within 5 minutes of meeting, she said to me, "Sister, I know we just met, but I need to invite you to the moon dance in Mexico. And she said, it's a 4-year commitment. We dance and we pray for 4 nights. We fast. There's Temazcal, which is a sweat lodge down there. And she said, it's a big commitment, but I'm feeling the call. She's like, I know we just met, but I've been waiting for you. 2 years she had been waiting to invite someone, and Spirit wove us together at the perfect time for that invitation to come. And just a couple weeks before that, I was in ceremony and I received the message that tobacco is my medicine. That tobacco, that humble plant, the plant that so many people misuse and that they're smoking, chain smoking all day at work or whatever it may be, is actually deeply sacred. It is a medicine of prayer. And I had been using it before, working with it as some Indigenous elders had taught me, where I would go places and I would put tobacco down on the land to honor and to give thanks. The first time I was taught that was actually as a little girl. Auntie May Cat, who lived across the street from me, came out to our cottage. And she actually, at the time, she even unrolled a cigarette and she put the tobacco on the ground as we were harvesting Labrador tea leaves. And she said to me, when you take something from the earth, you first give. It's an important lesson. We take a lot from this earth of ours. This great mother that we have the privilege of walking upon. Instead of treading lightly, we walk with heavy feet. And we stamp down the earth without understanding the seeds that are beneath the shoes that we wear. We're disconnected. Instead of being barefoot on the soil, the rubber insulates us from remembering who we are. When we put our feet in the earth and we put our hands down on the ground, we remember. When I was in Costa Rica and Maddie and I first arrived, on the 3rd day, our little jungalow, we were surrounded by trees, and the power of the jungle there, she is ravenous. She will eat you alive if you stay out too long. And I put my hands in the dirt, and Maddie served me rape, another form of tobacco. And as I put my hands down, I prayed and I asked Spirit, help me. Help me. Please help me to walk in a good way. Help me to walk gently. Help me to be part of the restoration and healing of this land I am on. As a person with European roots who's been living in the North and still just learning about the history of the land and her ancestors and how she got here, here I was now feeling equally like a colonizer heading down to the South and all of a sudden being in that land and deciding to have a good time. I was like, no, how can I be part of the healing, not just for the people at this retreat that I'm serving, but how can I be part of the healing of this land? How can I be part of helping this local community? How can I do this in a good way? And it begins first in our hearts and our prayers. I have people ask me all the time, what can I do to move reconciliation forward? And the first thing, it's for us to learn. But I would say even before that, it's for us to get really clear with our own hearts and get earnest about our own desire to connect. And where we don't know, we start to educate ourselves. And that's sometimes where there will be grief, there will be sorrow when you learn what actually happened on the land you're on. Good. Because it helps you to feel yourself here. And it helps you to pray and say, Spirit, please help me be part of the healing. And I've been having deeper and deeper revelations of that. And as I put my hands in the earth in Costa Rica and I felt her heartbeat as the tobacco was going through my body and I had the tobacco in my hands on the ground, I said, please help me. And I'm here to serve. Just at that moment, Maddie points up to the tree and he says, Audra, look. And I was quite annoyed that he was taking me out of my prayer for, a hummingbird or something. And I turn around and there's a sloth coming down the tree. A 3-toed sloth that's apparently very shy and doesn't like to be around people was coming down the tree. And he looked right at me and looked right at Maddie, made eye contact with us both, and then continued. And it was in that moment where I felt that my prayer had been received, that there was a reciprocity of energy, that as I was blessing her and I was asking, please let my life help in this healing, it was like this life came down to say, I see you. Hello. And we followed the sloth, and there's a video that I've shared of like actually the sloth coming down on the ground right in front of me and going to the next tree. It was so deeply profound, and it was the beginning of our trip. And that's where I knew when we talk about doing things in a good way, it was like the beginning of saying, yes, I want to do things in a good way. And Spirit saying, I hear you. Let me show you the way. And so often when we're close, when we get really close to nature, and maybe some of you this weekend, you went to nature. Maddie and I went to High Park, and the whole park was like bustling. But no matter how busy it is, if you can just get to a tree and you can ask it some questions, or like listen to the wind, all these things that I used to think were just hyperbole or just like people say. I remember some Indigenous elders when I first started having the honor of sitting with them in community, was hearing these sort of ways that they would speak about the land or about the animals. And I'm like, oh, that's really nice. I didn't realize what they were saying was actually quite literal. How important it is. We need to listen. We need to listen. When we were in Costa Rica, we were there for 5 weeks. Oh, my makeup's really running, isn't it? We were there for 5 weeks, and we were working with an incredible woman that we love and respect named Jessie. She had a retreat there. We'll probably be going back in February for a couple of weeks. So if anyone's interested, just message me. We would love to have you there too. And my job was to hold the energetic container for the entire month. There were people who would come and go. There were people who would stay the whole month. But my job was to help with the energy, which actually meant like through prayer and through like in like the work that we were doing in that way. But also if somebody was feeling a little unsettled, if somebody needed a hug, like that was my job. I was like retreat mom. And I'm not a mom with any natural children. Like I don't have any babies in this lifetime that I have to care for. But just like another beautiful medicine woman I know, Angie, she's probably in her 50s, I'd say. Angie Tovan, if anybody knows Angie, she calls everyone her babies. And it was like, I felt like that. I felt like the mom. I felt like the one who could, where people could come to me if they needed something. And there was such a great privilege to be able to be entrusted with that. And it was also really freaking hard work. So to all the moms out there, can I just say my hat's off to you? To the mothers, like deep, because for me, it was only a month and it was with people who are apparently all adults. For you actually holding that for children, the very real desires and needs and like emotional needs and unregulated emotional needs, like wow. Because for me it was from like, first thing in the morning till I went to bed at night, and I had a day off a week. And I know moms here don't always get that, so I just want to say I have deep respect for you. I have deep respect for you. I feel for me that part of my job and part of why perhaps I haven't had children in this lifetime is to do this sort of work. And there's something about reparenting ourselves. And although I get to hold this space and kind of feel like mom for some people at a certain time, it's always bringing them back to themselves, to reparent themselves, to hold their own inner child, to not create dependence on anything outside of themselves, because sometimes that's the issue that got us into this mess in the first place. If you know my previous story, the one of codependency, depression, unhealthy marriage, all of that stuff, which I'm really feeling is not going to be a story I tell publicly quite so much anymore, even though it helps people to know that I can relate to what they might be going through. But there's something that has happened in me that shifted me in the energy more so to this mature embodiment of all the things I knew here suddenly falling into my heart and into the depths of my being. And maybe you can feel it as you're hearing me speak. For me, the biggest initiation and one of the most grand experiences I've had my whole life was the moon dance in Bacalar. And my madrina, she's still here, Marina, she was the one who invited me. And as she said, we pray with tobacco. So my prayer with tobacco in the land in Costa Rica was only the beginning of the trip. When we ended up in Mexico, in Bacalar, it was, the energy was like something you could feel. There were over 250 women there, all of them coming with their prayers. Before I arrived to the moon dance, while I was in Costa Rica, I had my somador, my fire, burning with copal. I had tobacco that was gifted to me from 3 beautiful men, including 2 of them are on this call, Maddie, Adam, and also our friend Roy Noggins. And I was sitting there with the tobacco and weaving my prayers. And when I wrapped the prayers, it was in cloth. Maybe you've seen a little prayer like tobacco prayer. And there were 13 yellow ones that were for the first direction, the east and the air, for my childhood, for inspiration. Then there were 13 blue prayers for the south, for the water. And a lot of us think of the water as washing us, but the water actually teaches us strength. The teaching I received down there is that the water shows us strength because the water can get through anything. There is no obstacle to the water. Whether there's rocks, whatever it may be, it will find its way. The river will flow. And the water also holds memories. We think of the water as being the thing that washes us clean, but part of what I've been receiving as a teaching is the fire cleans us. The water holds the memory, holds the energy. So I actually brought a bottle of water from Lake Ontario, which I'm looking out at right now, and I brought it to the moon dance. And on the second night, the night of the water, placed it on the altar, as did many other women, so that it may absorb the energy of our prayers of the moon dance. And then I brought it back with me, back in my suitcase, and it's now sitting on my altar. And when the energy feels right, I will return that water to Lake Ontario. And that is so all the prayers from that dance, then the memory, the energy is encoded in that water. And those prayers to heal the land are brought to the north again. Isn't that cool? So 13 prayers for my adolescence, for the water, for the emotion, 13 prayers at that time as well that were for strength, for where I needed to grow. And then there were 13 red prayers, and those 13 prayers of tobacco were for the fire, the west. And those prayers were connecting me more into the transformation, into the shift that was happening. And then 13 prayers for the north, the element of earth. And those 13 prayers are for mature age, 40 to 52 and beyond. And I'm like, how cool is it that I get to do my first year of the moon dance, having turned 40, that I've actually made it all the way through to all 4 directions. And now it's like, boom, we're ready to go. So for those of you who are like me, and maybe you're 40 plus, know it's just beginning. My friend Amon shared a beautiful quote with me that said, everything before 40 is research. And I'm starting to believe this to be true. Because now I know what I want. Now I know who I am, and I'm bringing that forward in my prayers. So I brought those prayers to the moon dance. And when we arrived and registered 250 women, we all had to go up to where the dance was happening. And we planted the prayers for each direction in the earth. So what's the math on that? 250 women, each with 52 prayers. How many prayers are in the earth? Maddie will do the math. 13,000. 13,000 prayers were in the earth. And this circle they created had, each direction had a door, each direction had a sacred fire. There were crystals that were gridding the place and buried in the middle. When we had our first night, when we had our very first session or very first ceremony, it was actually to prepare for the ceremony and the prayers to come. There was Mexica dancers, like that traditional Mayan dance, if you've ever seen that down in Mexico. And we had to dance for hours to build the energy, to honor each of the directions, and to honor the prayers that we were about to dance over those 4 nights, the 13,000 prayers plus, plus, plus. Because there were certainly more prayers that came out as I was dancing. We all had to prepare ourselves and what we needed to wear. And the colors are the colors that I'm wearing now. In fact, these earrings I bought from a Mexican woman down there who had danced, I believe, her 4 years. And you'll see this is actually meant to be the colors of the lagoon of Bacalar, and the moon, because we dance under the full moon and the stars. I'm not sure if you can see. Beautiful, one-of-a-kind earrings that I just felt like I wanted to support her as an artist, but I also wanted to take home this beautiful piece of art to remind me of how beautiful that dance was, because we camped right beside the lagoon. We did Olin Cuepa, which is basically an Aztec yoga. It's yoga postures based upon the Aztec tonal, which is like the astrology. For me, I actually had to put the symbol of the tonal, of my tonal, my astrological symbol based on the time and place of my birth. I had to paint it and put it on my clothing. We had to wear ribbons that were of different colors on our white garments. So if you can imagine this, the night has fallen, the sacred fire is lit, and there's 250 women gathering to march up to the circle where they will dance for hours. And dance we did, drumming, dancing, singing for many hours at a time until felt like it was satisfactory in our prayer for that direction. And it was such an amazing thing for me because, I mean, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I was year 1. There was a lot of humility showing up and being like, okay, like I feel like I got a lot of things like pretty sorted in my life, and I got there. I can't speak Spanish. The whole thing was in Spanish. I don't know any of the dances. I have no idea what's happening most of the time, and to like basically just go through. We had to fast 4 nights, no food, only honey and lime in our water. And we had temazcal, which is the traditional sweat lodge from the South, before and after every night of our dance. And it was in a temazcal that I had my experience with the greatest teaching that I am so honored to share with you here, because I believe that this is literally the most potent teaching that I have ever received that has allowed me to speak with boldness with you now. Let's just take a breath here. Big exhale out. It was this first night of the temazcal that I felt like I knew what I was doing. Because I grew up in Thunder Bay and there's a lot of saunas there. I was like, I've been sweating all my whole life. I'm really good at this. Then I danced. The second night, I got into the temazcal, and I had started my bleed the day before. The very beginning of the ceremony, my blood came, which was no surprise because I've seen this happen before. And I believed it to be quite sacred to be able to dance with 250 women, with many of us bleeding, but none of us allowed to take showers or baths. We weren't allowed to touch water, only to drink it. And it just felt like this really like powerful, powerful time, that energy. And after reclaiming my own relationship to my body and my blood over the last several years, I consider it really beautiful and sacred every time it happens, especially as I'm now in my 40s and I know there will be a day that it's my last. So I really honor it. But at the same time, I was honoring the fact that I was exhausted. My body was feeling worn down, tired, hormonal, and also just like physically strained. So I went into the temazcal not feeling great to begin with. And if anyone knows me, you know a bit of my story, and you know that I've struggled with perfectionism at different times. And for the most part, I've healed it. But sometimes it comes up just like that healing spiral. And I was in the Temescal and we were going around the circle. So it's completely dark. I'm shoulder to shoulder with 30 women sitting on the gravel, terribly uncomfortable. And they're all speaking and saying something, and it gets to me. And I asked the woman beside me, I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand, like, what's asked of me? And she said, well, you're invited to say a prayer. Like, what are you praying for tonight? And I said, well, said, okay, I pray for transformation so I may better serve the world, that whatever needs to shift in me may transform. And very quickly I was corrected. The abuela, the woman who was facilitating the temescal, said, no, that's not what we pray for tonight. You pray for strength so you can have a transformation. Because what I didn't realize, just like I told you, tonight was the night of the water, where we pray for strength, and the strength comes before the transformation. And how often in our society do we get that backwards? That in itself was a huge teaching. I was like, oh my gosh, like so often I'm praying or asking or saying, wanting to manifest this big shift in my life. And I haven't actually asked for the strength to make the change in me that's necessary for that thing to happen. Because the thing hasn't happened, usually not because it's like not its time or you're not worthy of it. It's nothing like that. Quite often, I think it's actually right there for us, and we just haven't yet found the strength to make the shift, to maybe let go of the old thing, to make space for the new, right? Or maybe there's a part of us where it's like, I haven't actually had the strength to step out and grab that thing. Whatever the transformation is that we're looking for, the shift has to first happen where we have the will, where we have the discipline. The following day, Ursula, the grandmother of the whole dance, made an example of me. She even said to all 250 women, last night there was someone who prayed. Last night there was someone who prayed for transformation. And that was wrong, because we must pray for discipline. We must pray for strength before the transformation. Tonight being the third night, just like we could pray for transformation now. So you can imagine the A student perfectionist in me and the little girl who's so afraid to get anything wrong when I was in the Temescal and they said, no, sorry, that's wrong. We don't pray for that. I went like contracted in myself. And I was like, oh, I'm bad. Right. And I didn't really say that, but there's a part of me that like, that's what I felt. I'm wrong. I shouldn't be here. That was definitely a loud voice in my ear. I shouldn't be here. I got it wrong. I shouldn't be here. I got it wrong. I'm not prepared. I'm not good enough, whatever the story is. And I just kept breathing and being okay with it. And shortly after that, the door opened and Ursula, the grandmother of the whole dance, the abuela who's overseeing everything, came in. And she said, sorry, I'm late. And I realized, oh my gosh, we haven't even begun. Because I had been in the Temescal and I had been sweating, and to the point where I thought I was physically complete. I'm like, okay, this has got to be almost over. I'm so hot. I'm overheating. I have my period. I'm not in a place to keep going. And I've now had an emotional response to feeling like I did the wrong thing. And I could feel my throat constricting. And I was like, no, like the invitation here is to relax and to realize you're okay, to have done the wrong, what you perceive to be wrong or not perfect, you're still here. And when she came in, she started sharing and saying to all of us about an incident that had happened, but more specifically that incident was reflecting to her how important it was to emphasize that every woman here was welcome to be here. No matter what language, no matter what country they were from, they were welcome. And she spoke with such passion that I had an opportunity in that moment to receive and to be like, no, I'm allowed to be here. I'm welcome to be here, even when I get it wrong. There was part of me really healing a deep, deep, deep layer, a thread that goes back to before I was born. My mother had lost 3 babies before me. And there's been more than one person that has told me, like one energy worker or psychic that has told me, they said, your mom lost babies before you and you've been holding on to being perfect because you thought you had to be because you were the one that made it. And that has rung true in me. And there's part of me, even with my family now, where I still feel this pull to try to do the thing that they want me to do, or be for their approval. And the approval of our parents, of course we want to make our parents proud, and we want them to feel good about our accomplishments and all of that, but holding on to that can keep us from becoming who we truly are. Because my real parent, my real connection is to spirit. Those parents, there's a poem my mom used to tell me that would talk about your children being not your own, and would talk about them being, you are the one that's holding the bow and steadying the arrow so you can see the arrow fly, and that the children are the arrows. So when I started to understand that, and I was in the Temescal, and I'm still trying to reconcile these parts of me, it was like I had another opportunity here in the deep, dark depth of this womb, the Temescal representing the womb. I was healing that part of myself. And then the grandmother comes in and says, you are accepted. You are loved. I'm so glad you're here. And it was like this, this healing in that moment. And then it didn't stop. And it got hotter and hotter and hotter. And I had already had an emotional response. And she came in, woman on fire, more rocks, more steam, more copal, and it got hotter and more intense. And you could tell that there was part of her coming in, talking about strength, talking about discipline, and saying, sorry, I'm late. You will not miss one bit of me, even though I'm here later than I planned. You're getting it all. So it was almost like we had two Temescal in one. Kept going. I got to a point where we were sitting up and I started to get dizzy and feel really unwell, and started to feel like I was having a bit of a panic attack. So I lay down on the ground and I actually cried for help. And there was a woman beside me who offered her hand and said, hold my hand. And I'm hearing in Spanish, like it's all in Spanish, and I'm just hearing teachings on love. She's teaching me about love. She's teaching me about strength. She's teaching me more and more and more. And I'm just lying there, and I'm like, had the moment where I actually felt like I was going to die. And in that moment on the ground, there was deep humility. And there was also a realization that perhaps if this was the moment, that there would be that full acceptance of my family, or the regret that they didn't get to see me. Or that in that moment, that if I did die, wow, this is truth coming out now. I've never said this before. That somehow my own death would prove something, or somehow it would make people regret something, or somehow it would mean I just didn't have to try so hard. Thank you for being here and receiving me as I'm speaking, because this was not how I thought that was going to go. The less vulnerable part of the story I would tell you is that I considered what would happen if I died, and Maddie calling my parents and saying Audra died in a Temescal, and them saying, what is a Temescal? um, I thought about what it would be like if Maddie and I never got to see each other in the physical again. How he was waiting just outside the Temescal. I thought about all the things that my life had been, and all the things I thought that it would be over the next 40 years. And there was a moment of like panic of like, I can't die right now. I have so much to do. And then there was pure acceptance that in the end, I'm ultimately partnering with the divine. That's the whole point. So if I die now, then we're just getting a fast track back, right? So there was a moment of acceptance. And then there was a prayer to spirit where I just said, I would like to live, please. and where I slowed my breathing down and just waited and just hoped that the Temescal would eventually be over. But at that point, there were multiple women on the ground, multiple women crying. And I had no idea of when it was going to end. And I started to feel myself getting dizzier and like panicking. And even after they finally did open the door and we got out, my heart was still beating super high, super fast for hours after. So yes, I'm here to tell the tale. I did survive. I got out and cried and still cry. And the greatest lesson was one of humility. And it actually came the following night where I got in the Temescal again. First of all, needing a great deal of courage to go back. And there was a strong Mexica dancer who came in, a woman who had danced the first night, and the women had asked her, she said over the loudspeaker, some of the women say, are you going to burn us in the Temescal? And she said, if I do, it's for your own good. So she entered to lead our Temescal. And I'm like, okay, we're in for it now. If I didn't die in the last one, it might be tonight. So as I'm there, I'm like, all right, well, here we go. And you know, life has a beautiful way of when you think you've learned a lesson, it brings it back around to make sure. That when you think like, okay, I learned my lesson, you get the opportunity again just to make sure you've integrated it. So maybe you've healed from a bad relationship, and then suddenly the person you're dating is showing you the same patterns of behavior as last time. Or maybe you quit that job and you stopped overworking yourself, and then suddenly you get offered another side project you can do off the edge of your desk. You know what I mean? Because the real integration only comes once you take action that stops you from doing the same pattern again. So here I was in the Temescal. And again, the prayers, women in the circle each started to pray. And it got to me. And I had a choice. I had a choice in that moment to be silent and to actually say, no, I don't need to pray. I don't need to say anything. To be so afraid of getting it wrong that I say nothing at all. And I was weighing this choice in my mind. Do I say nothing at all? Or do I be brave and speak? And I could tell that I only had one choice, because the saying nothing at all was immediately constricting my airway. I could feel my throat chakra seize up. I could feel my heartbeat faster. And I could feel that I was actually going to be buying into the same pattern of not being enough, of perfectionism and all that, if I said, no, it's okay, I'll pass. So I knew my only option was to be bold. And I said, yes, I would like to pray. And I said, sisters, thank you so much. I am so grateful to be here. I'm so humbled to be here. I said, yesterday I learned something about strength. And now that I've learned about strength and discipline, I pray for the transformation. So I took a breath, shared my prayer. Everyone, aho, agreed with me, continued on. The next woman prayed. I was not corrected. And I found myself that as I spoke, it was almost like I could feel the energy in my own heart, my own throat, and that's the thing you have to understand, is that when you do these things and you take that action, when you use your voice, whatever it is, you are healing yourself. You are repatterning. You are doing something different than what you did before. And it requires, for us to have that breakthrough, we have to make the shift and be bold and be courageous. But don't think that it's going to be somebody else that does it for you. It's you. It's you speaking out. It's you having the courage that it opens up and suddenly you are free. So for me, that's what happened. And I sat there and suddenly it got hotter and hotter. And the woman leading put more water on, and more rocks came in, and more copal, which makes it harder to breathe. And I at this certain point, I started to feel, and right away, I could hear my inner voice, my inner wisdom, that intuition that so often our own pride keeps us from listening to, and said, it's time to lie down now. Where the prideful part of me who says, well, now I'm the one who I could pray right, I could do this right, I'm good, I'm going to stay up here. That part of me said, no, listen to the inner voice, listen to your heart. And I heard the intuition say, it's time to lie down. And I lay down. And as soon as I lay down, I put my face back in the dirt, and I could hear spirit speak to me and say, and that is the key: boldness and humility in equal measure. That there is the key for us to share our gifts with the world. It is the key for us to be able to expand into the totality of all that we are, is to hold boldness and humility in equal measure. I was bold enough to speak, and I was humble enough to know when I no longer had the strength. I was bold enough to speak my prayer and humble enough to know that I had been invited in that circle, and that my job is to wait until the invitation comes for me to use my voice to share. And every time, that is the thing that we are taught, especially those, like, for me, and again, I talk a lot about, in elevating Indigenous voices, and as a cisgendered white woman living in an urban center, like, I have to be really careful when I get invited into a ceremony somewhere, even though the invitation is sincere and open. Like, I tread very carefully, because the last thing I want to do is what some of the settlers and ancestors of mine did, which was to take. I'm here to give. And if I take, it's a receiving of a gift in reciprocity. And that's the humility. That's the being humble part, right? I don't get it right all the time, but the humility allows me to keep checking myself. But here's the problem. Sometimes we're so humble, sometimes we hold so much humility, and sometimes it comes out as false humility, which is actually the ego. Because false humility has you keeping yourself small because you don't want anyone to think that you think you're the shit. False humility, where somebody gives you a really sincere compliment and you're like, no, I didn't. I used to see it as a singer in church all the time, where people would come and, like, someone would say to them, wow, I really love that song you've wrote. I really love your voice. And that person would be like, well, it's not I who sings, it is the Lord. Or they would say things that were of hyperbole. And I understood the intention of it, which was to always give thanks and glory back to God. But they were actually not allowing themselves to honor the gift that was being given to them. Because the energy of reciprocity, just like the sloth, just like the land, it happens with each one of us. If someone gives you a compliment, receive it like a bouquet of flowers and say thank you. Because when you say thank you, you're actually giving them a gift of knowing that their gift was received. The energy of reciprocity is what builds relationship. Reciprocity builds relationship. That's why some of our relationships are so uneven, because there isn't reciprocity. The friend who's always like, maybe it's a one-sided conversation every time you talk. Or maybe there's a family relationship with that family member always pulling. Or maybe you're that person in one of your relationships and you don't know yet, bringing awareness to it. So the point being in all of this is that the reciprocity, true reciprocity, especially when we start doing it in this big way of starting to show up in the world, it involves humility, but it also involves boldness to share our gifts. So what Spirit said to me in one of my biggest prayers of the moon dance, but especially one of my biggest prayers of transformation and of both the strength to change, but also of the transformation in my service to the world, was, Spirit, how can I show up more boldly and more fully? Because I haven't been using my voice fully. I've been really quiet on social media. I'm afraid to say things like it is. I'm afraid people won't like me. I'm afraid they won't receive it. And they said, boldness and humility in equal measure. If you're all boldness and no humility, you might be operating out of pride. We might be operating out of ego. And what comes before a fall? Pride comes before the fall. But with too much humility and not enough boldness, we never share. But if we have boldness and humility in equal measure, we know both when to speak and when to lie down and put your face to the earth and to ask for help. And I share this openly with you because it was one of those life-changing moments where Spirit spoke to me and was like, oh my God, this is the golden key to everything. And, you might be hearing this story and you're like, oh, Audra, nice story. That's cool. Whatever. Maybe I'll write that down in a note. It might not resonate with you as deeply, but I want you to know that anything you see different in me over the next little while is because of that. And I'm going to always strive to get that balance right. And I won't always get it right because I'm human and we mess up all the time. I'm going to mess up. And the thing that I really ask, and this is part of the humility part, is that you don't put me or any other person who's figured out how to share their voice with the world or the things they want to talk about, don't put anybody on a pedestal because it's not good for them, but it's really not good for you or your heart, because to put someone on a pedestal means you've lowered yourself. And that's not the whole idea of this reciprocity or the humility. It's to understand that the divinity that you are seeing in someone else, or the wisdom or the gifts, it's a mirror right back to you, showing you the truth of who you are. Especially if you feel really drawn to something, you're seeing a potential that already exists in you. And there's a timeline where this already has happened. How cool is that? You already are that. Maddie, my love, may I share the thing that came through for you? Because I think it was just such a profound, yeah. Maddie had, so I was co-facilitating with Eddie here in his beautiful space at Medicine Journey on Saturday, and Maddie had his own at home, and I got home and Maddie was just in this glazy, beautiful look. I got in the room and you never know what you're walking into when someone's had their own experience. And I was just going to hold space for him for whatever he needed. And I said, how was it? And he said, wow. I said, did you learn stuff? And he said, oh yeah. And the biggest thing he learned was this. Actually, Maddie, I know your mouth is full. I'll say it for you.
I'm here. What's up?
I want you to say it.
We do until we are. And that is around how we live our life, what our practice is. That until we embody the thing we are desiring, we do it until we are. And the beautiful thing is that loop never ends, because the moment we're there, and it's that humility piece of understanding that it's the ongoing work, it's the ongoing practice. So even when the arrival is felt, there's the doing that is the maintenance. Yeah. It was pretty heavy when I had it come through. It just struck like lightning. It's you do until you are. That was what I heard. So thanks, Audra.
Thank you. Maddie is another one where he's been trying to figure out how to share with the world. And I get the benefit of hearing from him all the time, but not others. So I felt to let you share that because I felt that was really powerful. And I love you, and your support for me has been immense. Maddie supported through the moon dance, not only when I came out of the Temescal and was on the ground and crying and he gave me a glass of water. We weren't allowed to talk. We weren't allowed to be around each other, and we had different places, but he learned a lot about himself as well, and learned a lot about service. And for the 4 nights, well, it was longer than that. It was multiple days that we were there, but he helped with the water. He helped, there were men that were supporting the women with the fire. with the most practical ways, the bathrooms, like all these things. It was just so beautiful to be in ceremony with so many other women and to have the men hold and like care for us in that way. It was super profound. And I feel that that exists in my life in so many ways in that relationship with Maddie. But as Maddie and I often talk about and teach, like we have that within ourselves. We get to hold that container for ourselves. We get to hold what our heart needs, what our expression is asking for, that we can learn how to be that to ourselves. And then once we learn how to be that for ourselves, then we're better off, we're in a better place to be able to seek relationship. I'm really grateful that a lot of my healing happened in the context of this relationship because we were both so growth oriented. But it was already because Maddie knew how to hold a lot of presence for me and for what was going on and for the awakening and the Kundalini energy and all this stuff where we had no idea what was going on at all. But there was no judgment, and he was able to be like, I think this is good for you, you know? It's so very beautiful to be walking together in this way. And the real truth is we're all walking together. All of us, everyone here on this call, everyone catching the recording, like you, I'm so grateful. There's some of you that have supported me in really practical ways. Connie came and cleaned our home so we'd come home to a sanctuary after our travels. Adam with the tobacco and where I carved my pipe. There were some that gave me gifts to be able to support me in the moon dance. There were some that messaged me and just sent their prayers. Andrea took care of all our plant babies and our snake baby. And like there were all these, like just the supportive community that was so very touching to me, where I really feel like I have family. And one of the things that's become so apparent to me in the time apart is to not be afraid of community. Because there's been times, here we go. Oh, wow. Okay, we're getting right real. Oh, okay. Can we just take a breath? And I would just like your permission, whether it's a nod or a yes, that you're willing to just hold space for what I'm about to share. Okay. I'm I'm just laughing because here I was thinking I was doing this call for all of you. I'm like, I'm going to teach you things. And the humility piece kicks in when I realize this is so much for my own integration and lessons. I've just realized in this very moment how afraid of community I've been. And I've been afraid of saying yes and going all the way in community, but I've been even more afraid of leading one because I've seen it done in unhealthy ways. I've been in churches where there's been a lot of control of how you think, or control of like how you behave or what you share or your sexuality or who you get to marry or what you get to do with your body. I've been in faith communities where instead of leading people closer to spirit, people are led more into a sense that they've done something wrong, that they've been the bad one, that there's condemnation, that they're not enough, and that they have to continue to pay some sort of penance instead of realizing the truth that they're already accepted and loved. I've been in communities where it took me years to heal, coming out the other side and to find myself again. I've been in intimacy and in marriage where I was not honored, where I gave my whole self for 10 years, 8.5 years married, only to realize on the other side that I tricked myself into thinking that's what I deserved. I have seen communities that were meant to be based on unity only create further division in their own ranks and to cancel each other and to hurt each other. I've seen intergenerational trauma play out in lateral violence. And I've seen my own heart break when I haven't known how to hold space for the community within myself, where I've pointed to the outcast and said they're not welcome in my own being. And I've been afraid of community, and I'm sorry. And I'm sorry to those of you who have asked for community from me, and I've shied from it. Those of you that have been in my group programs and you're like, Audra, it's the community calls that make these. And my own fatigue from doing so much one-on-one work keeps me from holding space for community and being like, I just want to teach. Let's not do a community aspect here. And then only to realize within 2 weeks of the program that the program doesn't mean anything without community. Like it's this, yeah. It's super humbling now to be on this call with all of you in that space, because like I knew Spirit was talking to me about it. Maddie and I have started doing community gatherings in Toronto called Sacred Sundays, which have been really special. It's been like a gathering people can come to no matter what you believe. And it's a place to connect with yourself and connect with Spirit. It's been so profound. And it's been like church, but not church without all the shitty stuff I just described. But still church, in that, you know, when Jesus said, he didn't say that the church was a building, it was the people. It was the community. It's the people coming together with a shared vision. And the vision doesn't have to be of like some religion. It can just be that of the world becoming a better place and of us learning how to love each other a little more. So I'm sorry where I've been afraid, and I'm realizing now where the healing needs to happen. So I'm so grateful for all of you. And Maddie, thank you, Maddie, for pulling me back to community all the time, because it's been a challenge for both of us to like find. And like the boldness and humility part is for me to be bold enough to say, yes, I want to be part of building community, and then humble enough to say that I need one, that I need it too. Like we all need it, right? One of the things I was going to share with you tonight, and I still will share, is that I'm running the Golden Path again. And the Golden Path is my group program. And the whole idea of the Golden Path is that it was something Spirit showed me in a reading for someone once. They said, the Golden Path, the Golden Path. And they kept showing me. It was almost like Dorothy Gale in Kansas walking down the yellow brick road into a place where she actually discovers that home was within herself, and every one of her companions realizes that everything that they were searching for they had all along, and that the supposed wizard that's so great is actually just a little man behind a curtain pulling some strings, and that we all have our own connection to the divine in ourselves. And the true sense of the Golden Path and the real meaning of it is that as we walk, the path is revealed. As we step, the next step becomes apparent to us, in that a true spiritual walk of the true spiritual seeker is one where all you need to know is what's right in front of you, and you just ask for the divine to guide you, instead of getting all your human thoughts of like what needs to happen 10 years down the track. We just take one step at a time. When Spirit told me to look this up, it turned out to actually be a concept in like the Baha'i faith and in Kabbalah. And so I created this program, and we did it last term. And I was like, I'm going to do this program, and I'm going to like start just teaching and not holding so much community calls, because I was feeling like the weight of it. And this time around, coming out of the moon dance, coming out of the initiations, everything that's happened, it was like Spirit was like, you know that that's actually the program, right? And I was like, okay. So I added on 4 community calls. So I'm still going to do the 8 teaching calls, but I'm going to do 4 community calls where we hold space, where we ask questions. And and there's more to be developed, but and there's a part of me that's really scared, if I can be completely honest with you. And And I can see now, like, this all makes sense to me now, why spirit did this in this. Like, it makes sense to me why this is coming out now. Because had this come out before this moment, had this revelation about community come out before this call, I would have tried to figure out a way to process it in my own mind, or have some eloquent way of saying it that doesn't obligate me to anything beyond what I'm prepared for. But the depth of the humility in this is me going like, I don't really know. I don't really know what I'm doing. I know how to hold space. I know how to love people, and I know how to point people back to themselves. I know how to not be a leader that leads in a way where it's like I'm creating an authoritarian, or like, I don't have all the answers, and I'll never claim to, and I'll never let anybody else say that I do, because that's not the truth. We're all humans doing human things, and we do until we are. So my job is to do the things that I'm doing until I embody them and I can just be them for you. And the thing that I feel I've been learning how to be more and more is love. And that's the highest law, the answer to the everything. And I have the greatest gratitude to be able to share this with all of you. And I'm deeply humbled to be on this path. I'm deeply humbled to share my stories tonight with you of working with the tobacco, of the temescal, of the dance, of the sloth, but really of the concept of the journey to the sacred, which is to bring you back home to yourself. And that's my job here. That's what I really feel my job is here. So I love you all so much. I just think this is like, I don't even know. I feel like I'm going to need some aftercare after this. I feel like I'm going to. Maddie's there. Eddie's just outside. He can hug me. He can hug me, and then I'll come home to you, my love. Yeah, all the hearts, all the love. I appreciate all you so very much. I'm going to take a quick look in the chat here because I haven't looked really the whole meeting. Just that I appreciate you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Lisa. Yes. I'm reading that. Yes. Be the bridge. Yes, Lisa, be the bridge. That's all what so many of us are doing is we are being the bridge. And I've been using that word, has come up for me many times, has been like, how can I bridge communities? How can I bridge conversations? How can I bridge understanding? And the concept of the medial woman, some of you may have seen that in my social media using that word, was the between, living between worlds, which for me is sometimes between right and left, between right and wrong, between different ideas and concepts and belief systems. But it's also between spirit and earth. And so much of my work now has been working on energetic realms and working with spirit. One of the other things I'll share with you that I won't share often or all the time has been that so much of this work now, and this is what I won't share publicly, it doesn't happen with people or just with people. Like, I'm starting to have more and more things happen where it's in the unseen realms. My mother asked me before I went to Costa Rica, she said, I was on your website. What do you mean medicine woman? And I was like, oh gosh, are we having this conversation now? And part of that conversation was what I didn't share with her that I wish I had, was that the reason I use a word like that is about working with energy. It's about working in the unseen realms. It's not just about plants or about people connecting with the medicine inside themselves. It's actually that I'm working in different worlds. I'm working with energies. When Maddie and I do Shiva Shakti sessions, we are working with energy, and we have seen some of the most incredible experiences. Almost like people are on a string, these energies that move through them. We've seen people, the testimonials coming out of it are incredible. And it's just because we understand how to set a container, how to create this space and hold this energy for it to happen. It's been so remarkable. And in the jungle, some of the sessions down there were especially potent, which was partly, I think, due to the jungle energy, but I think more so due to the fact that people came in ready. They were ready to surrender. They were ready to trust. They were ready just to be like, so there's someone here on this call who already registered. Yay. Can't wait to see you, Karen, on Saturday. Surrender, trust, and know that you're held. And like it's the same as any medicine journey, same as going into the Temescal. There's a death and rebirth process, which just involves us fully letting go. And when we let go, we get to become, we get to remember, and we get to be guided into something new. Many of you know that before I left for Costa Rica and Mexico, I closed everything. I closed all my clients, I closed all my programs, and I basically said farewell on social media. And I basically cut off all ties to anything that needed to happen when I came back. And even years ago, when I used to sign contracts at a job, I would only sign 3 months at a time if I had the choice, because there was something for me about creating the space to say yes again, or to decide what the new was going to be. And in this case, it was about going into ceremony, letting go of everything I knew, letting it get shuffled in the beautiful divine sludge of the cocoon. You know, when we talk about a cocoon, we say that the caterpillar doesn't just become the butterfly, it becomes this like gooey mush. And then the gooey mush somehow comes back together and forms a butterfly. So like letting yourself be mush on the in-between sometimes means that the old identity gets released completely. It's like, I am no longer a caterpillar, I am gooey mush. So I let go of all these things I was doing and all this stuff. And I said to people, they're like, are you going to do this again? Are you going to do mentorship? Are you going to do Shiva? And I'm like, I don't know. Do I want to? Yeah, probably. But I don't know. Because it was only there that I could be in the full surrender to spirit of what could be. So yeah, it's wild to me, because the last thing I thought coming back was that there would be such a strong pull to community. Like I didn't think that. I thought it was actually quite the opposite, to be honest, if I'm really honest with myself. I thought it was kind of this sense of like not having firm roots anywhere, and like Maddie and I traveling everywhere and not necessarily creating a sense of real stable community in any one place, of just like flitting about. And I'm now seeing it's quite the opposite of that. So some of you are in Toronto and you're part of our community in Ontario, and some of you it's been online, and we're part of a more global community. And to me it's all the same. There's been people I've had relationships with just online, like Jessie Magic, who we went to hold a retreat with in Costa Rica. We had only met her online before February. And like our souls recognized each other in that first Zoom call. And the depth of intimacy we have with her, we had long before we actually could hug and be in the flesh. Yeah, it's so possible. I love you. I love you. I'm so grateful for you all. Thank you for these comments. This means a lot. It really does. It really, really does. And I'm humbled that you would all be here. I'm humbled as well, those watching the recording. I now see again why it's going to be up for a short time, because it is some of my most vulnerable and rare moments caught live on camera. Cool. That's part of the humility piece too, is being cool with that. So yeah, thank you for your reflections. Let's just take a breath. I just want to tap in if there's any final things to share with you that will be for you this evening. Specifically, I'm just asking if there's anything for people here or catching the replay. Okay. So this wasn't what I was thinking. What I'm seeing, instead of just final words, is just There's a few of you, and I'm seeing the number 4. There's at least 4 people on this call where you have been very specifically trying to work out or plot out the thing that you feel you're here to share. There's a gift, there's a course, there's something where you're like, okay, I feel like I'm almost ready. And I feel I can see like a mapping. I can also see a certain grid lines. And there's one person in particular where I'm seeing this certain vision. Yeah, of like this tower. This is not what I wanted either. My third eye is going down. The lesson, or what we're all being reminded of, is that just like the golden path, we see the next step as we take it, but also your own creation, especially if you have chosen to create in partnership with the divine and you've been intentional about that, where you have felt like something's dropped in, like it's channeled, or you felt like this was something that I came in a dream, or something that's been woven into my being since I was a little kid. Whatever it is, if what you're creating is in that alignment with the divine, please understand that it already exists in the natural world. So that the way, yes, thank you, the way that we are creating in this is less about you deciding in your mind what you're building and more about being the midwife for the creation, allowing it to be birthed through you, and realize that it already exists because it's already been made in, whether you say it in the quantum realm, in your heart, in your mind, in your ideas and thoughts, it already exists. So your job is simply to ask for clarity on what already is and let it be birthed so that people might not understand it right away, but the structure has already been planted or already been made. I'm even seeing like the foundations of a building, like that tower I saw, the foundations are already there. And in some cases, the foundation's even been laid by those before you. So you don't need to worry so much about getting that first, that first pillar right. And as artists and teachers and everything, like often that's what we're doing, is we're actually bringing the energy through of something that already exists. And anything I teach, none of it's new. It's like, and it's not quite repackaged ideas. It's just that things are flowing through because truth is truth, right? We're brought back to whatever the thing is that's helping you remember. But yeah, I'm seeing in particular, there's certain people, even as you've been listening to the call, where you've been like, okay, boldness and humility, but I'm not ready yet. Just take the first step and actually realize that, just like that story I told you, when we use our voice, or when we start, when we begin, you've done something in the energy that said yes. So instead of you waiting for the energy to be right, you make it right by saying, now's the time. And only you will know if that was for you. But I could see that in particular for a few. And then the other message for a few others here is one of gentleness. Of compassion for self. If you've been beating yourself up, or if you've been kind of in this hard place where there's been an expectation that you should be somewhere else or further along, or you had a different plan for this time, just hold yourself with compassion and love, knowing you're divinely supported. And finally, just for all of us, for every person, I just want to say that I believe each of us has a gift to share. And that gift is in your being and not your doing. Like the story of the lorikeet that some of you have heard before, where I was in Australia and I saw the lorikeet in the trees, the birds squawking. And I could hear spirit say to me, "What are they doing?" I'm like, "What do you mean, what are they doing? They're being birds. They're squawking, they're pooping, they're eating berries, they're fighting." And I just heard clear as day, they're bringing me glory. And I realized in that moment that the birds were showing me that all I needed to do was be myself, my true self. And I was already coming into greater alignment with the divine plan for my life just by being me. That sometimes your service to the world is to be big, bright, beautiful you. And that's it. You don't have to do anything. So with that, everyone, I just want to say thank you again. I'm going to close the call. I want to express my deepest gratitude. And yeah, stay in touch this year because I really believe that there's going to be much more to come. I love you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.